Hi, everyone. I'm Michael Susan, and on behalf of Perimeter 81, thank you for joining us today for this exciting webinar, The New Wave of Zero Trust for a New Era of Work. In this webinar, Senior Analyst at Forrester, David Holmes, and the lead author and architect of the Forrester New Wave report is joining Perimeter 81 CEO Amit Bareket to highlight the significance of Zero Trust network access in this new era of remote, hybrid, and cloud-based work. So we have a very exciting time ahead of us. And just so everyone is aware of what we're going to be discussing, I'm going to quickly go through the agenda items. I'm, of course, going to introduce you guys to our wonderful speakers today. We'll also give you a brief introduction of the ZTNA New Wave report. Then you're going to spend some time with David as he discusses Zero Trust and some Forrester stats and insights. Of course, Amit will take us on his journey up to Perimeter 81 ZTNA Vision, a platform micro demo, a sneak peek, and of course, an audience Q&A. If you do have any questions, feel free to drop it in the Bright Talk dialog box. And of course, if you'd like to download or view the complimentary report, you can do so after the webinar comes to a close. So with that being said, I would love to introduce David Holmes, Senior Analyst at Forrester. David, do you want to say a quick word about yourself?
Sure, we'll just do it as a mic check. I'm David Holmes. I'm an analyst at Forrester. I have a bio slide coming up, and I'll do my real intro then. But I'm excited.
Perfect. Amazing. Amit, CEO and co-founder of Perimeter 81. Mike's do a mic check for you.
Yes. Hi, everyone, and thank you, David, for joining me to this webinar. My name is Amit. I'm the co-founder and the CEO of Perimeter 81. I'm currently based out of the US, the West Coast in New York, and I'm happy to be here with you today to go over the content.
Amazing. Wonderful. Okay, David, so why don't you tell the audience, especially those that may not know about the report or know it as in great detail like we do, tell us about the ZTNA New Wave report for 2021 Q3.
Sure. So if you're familiar with Forrester, you might know us as one of the world's premier research organizations, right? We specialize in helping technology leaders make decisions to help drive growth in their companies. And one of the things we do is we do evaluative research on different technologies, and we have certain reports where we'll list vendors and group them, and then others where we actually put them through a competitive analysis and then determine some of them being leaders and some of them being challengers, et cetera, et cetera. And so this was one of those reports, right? So the and I'll mention this later on in the webinar, but there was so much interest in zero trust network access throughout the pandemic that I asked Forrester management chain, hey, can I do a wave on the zero trust network access providers out there? And the report was just published, and I understand that Perimeter 81 has licensed it, so anybody who's watching this or goes to your website can get it, and that's great.
Definitely, yeah, it's an excellent report, and we recommend everybody take a look at it after the call. So without any further ado, Amit, the floor is yours. Talk to us about Perimeter 81 becoming ZTNA leaders in 2021 for the Q3 report.
So I appreciate handing it over to me, Michael. I want to reiterate that we have achieved that basically by working very, very closely with our customers for a long time now, since we've released the product initially as a general availability at the beginning of 2018. We've worked with thousands of customers. Today we have above 1,900 customers all over the world. In order to understand how does the ZTNA, how does the remote access solution that is delivered over the cloud edge as a software solution on a user-centric perspective needs to look like. And we've gone through a lot of iterations and lots of calls with our customers on to understand how the product needs to evolve. And not only the deep technology that we've developed that starts with our multi-cloud edge network that we've built across all the world, about 30 different POPs in order to provide a reduced latency and a very different amount of details that we've introduced to a software-based delivery solution to how such a ZTNA solution needs to look like, what features are more important, what features are not, or less. And we found out that one of the key elements are the simplicity and the ease of use. The fact that today the IT manager can go into a management platform that exists in the cloud anywhere is, right? And to have an holistic view of his network and the access policies, while on the other end, the employees are working from home, and basically the internet became the new corporate network of the organization, is key. And not only allowing to the IT manager or the IT team or the security teams to manage effectively and securely the access to different environments, regardless if they're on-prem or in the cloud, to make it easy and quick to implement, right? With COVID started in February, companies needed to do that shift overnight. And this is where basically the Perimeter 81 platform met the market, right? After a very long process of working very closely with our customers, which we still do, right? And as we work with them, we improve the platform, adding the right features and making sure the product roadmap is aligned with the market needs, right? We made it easy and intuitive to consume and implement. And how we call it, we've met the actual test in February 2020 when COVID started, right? And overnight we needed to onboard hundreds of customers and have lots of expansion, which only strengthened ourselves, right? The product, and allowed us to have a leading position in this space and get a very strong recommendations from our customers, but also have been able to develop a very strong platform with a very deep technology that still it's in the beginning, I believe, of revolutionate the way that we consume internet and security. And last but not least, we invest a lot in customer, not only feedback, but support, guidance, our customer success teams that exist 24/7 all around the globe to help, right, companies to do that migration to a cloud-based delivered service.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amit. I appreciate that. Moving on, David. The floor is yours.
All right. Thanks, everybody. So as I mentioned earlier, the Forrester is a research company. When we work with business and technology leaders to develop customer-obsessed strategies to drive growth. And this is my bio slide. These are my coverage areas on the right. I cover network security, and I'm one of two analysts at Forrester whose primary coverage area is zero trust. So if a client calls and they want us and they say, hey, we want to have a zero trust initiative at our company, or we want to approach zero trust from a tactical perspective, how do we do it? I also cover DNS and visibility and DDoS and crypto and a whole DNS and a whole bunch of other stuff. But I brought some trend data here to show you that even though I cover all of these things, almost all of the calls that I get have been about zero trust network access, or what Forrester calls zero trust edge, which is the larger strategic concept of pushing all security functions out to be cloud delivered. You might see that in the market as SASE, SASE, but effectively the same model. But here you can see when a client calls Forrester and they say, hey, I want to talk to David Holmes, and we record what they want to talk about. So this is from Q4 2020, right? So a year ago, in the thick of the pandemic. You can see that the number of calls that I got about zero trust network access or zero trust edge is almost more than all the other kind of calls that I get, right? And it certainly felt that way at the time. And so while I say that this is a very, very exciting technology, it's not just me, right? It's all of you who are calling me and asking about it. So I know it is very, very much top of mind, which is one of the reasons that I was able to prioritize a ZTNA wave. And my only regret is that I couldn't have gotten it out sooner. These waves are an immense amount of work, as the people at Perimeter 81 can attest. I haven't gone through the process, but I wish I could have had the report ready, in the in the first quarter of the pandemic, but the report is out there now. Now, interestingly, one of the things we found during the pandemic was, right, there was a business need for people to adopt zero trust for the first time ever, right? It wasn't just about a defensive, I want to make my defenses better, or have a better security posture, or reduce my threat surface, right? All which are all good things. But the pandemic forced people to say, I need to replace my VPN because I do not have the bandwidth, right, to do all these Zoom calls and two-way video. And so ultimately they turned to ZTNA solutions, most of them. And for them, it's their first introduction to zero trust. So just to remind you, Forrester is the research firm that first publicized zero trust back in 2008, 2009. The analyst was John Kindervag, who is on the team that I am on now. Let me put it that way. We didn't overlap at Forrester, but I've talked to him several times. But anyway, in his initial papers for zero trust, he posited 3 core principles, and these are all still true today. Right? Many people know zero trust as consider all networks untrusted. You might say it today as use identities to authenticate people before giving them network access, which is a better way and is more aligned to what ZTNA is. But effectively, the concept is still the same. A second core principle is least privilege access must be enforced. And the third one, while the report didn't use the term assumed breach, that's what effectively John meant, is that you need to have machinery in place to be able to monitor everything and be able to respond to it, hopefully in an automated fashion as well. So those were the 3 core principles of zero trust, which are embodied in ZTNA solutions today and have become many organizations' first taste of zero trust. And so far, they've liked it. So I had mentioned we have a model we call the Zero Trust Edge, which you might also see as SASE out there. And they're effectively the same model. A fellow analyst at Forrester, Andre Kindness, who represents the networking side, and myself, who represent the security side, we went up for a year and did our own research to come up with the Zero Trust Edge model. And one of the things we did during our research is we asked 60 security professionals, hey, of the security services that you would be looking to consume as a service, how would you rank them? So what is their importance if you're looking at a Zero Trust Edge architecture? And they responded, the Zero Trust access or Zero Trust network access is the number one thing that a vendor solution has to have. And I agree with this. Their second response is a secure web gateway or URL filtering of some kind, right? And I can attest that this is still true in all the client calls that I take. These are the 2 things that people ask about the most. After that, it becomes 3 and 4 are CASB and DLP. And some vendor solutions have one, but not the other. And you can find a lot of differentiation here. And so when people call and they might have a conversation with me to say, David, we're looking at this model, what vendor should we talk to? I might ask them, what are your requirements around secure web gateway or URL filtering or CASB or DLP? Because I find that many of the vendors are stronger in some and weaker in others. Speaking of, let's take a look at the actual wave that just was published, I want to say about 2 months ago. I had finished the wave, and then I went on paternity leave. So I sort of missed all the hoo-ha as it got published, but I'm glad to be here picking it up. Now, when I started the wave, there were over 35 vendors who wanted to be in it, which is too many. A wave can only have 15 vendors in it. And so the inclusion requirements that I drew up were the following here. There's 5 of them. I won't necessarily read them all, but it had to be a proprietary zero trust network access product or service that they owned, right? It can't be IP from somebody else that you're just leveraging or reselling. Revenues of at least 5 million, at least 150 ZTNA vendors and a global presence, and then at least some dedicated employees to it, and then some mind share within the industry. So using these inclusion requirements, I got it down to 15, and I'll show those 15 in a minute. But before I do, the way these waves are done is they're done by criteria. And this particular wave had 7 current offering criteria, which represents each vendor's placement vertically in the grid. There are 3 strategic ones that you can see them here at the bottom, which represent their position going toward the right. So if they're up and to the right, as you want to be in literally any analyst report, you have to do well with your current offering, and you have to have a pretty good vision and good strategy, and your customers have to speak well of you. That's probably the most important criteria. But of the current offering ones, right, that represent, say, the current capabilities of the solution, 3 that I thought were of particular interest were, and going down from the top here, the non-web and legacy applications. So all ZTNA solutions today support effectively web applications, right? That's table stakes, and that should just work for everybody. The differentiation comes in if you are trying to support something like a thick client behind your firewall, or you're trying to do VoIP or SIP or RDP or the other things that aren't just web applications, right? These become really, really important. And their importance can depend on your own business. So for example, I had talked with one client who said, well, we bought this other solution, and it turns out it doesn't support VoIP, voice over IP. And that's a problem because we're a call center. And I told them, well, I wish you would have called me first, because I would have told you don't talk to that vendor, go talk to these other vendors. So I found that to be a criteria that I wanted to score on. And then ecosystem integration. What I think is important here is the larger organization you are, the more likely it is that you have third-party partners with whom you provide access to your applications, and they might, help you do billing or manage some of your network or your applications or submit invoices or whatever it is, right? It's a business thing, and they're a third party, and it works for you to just give them access to your stuff, right? In the old days, you'd have to create an account for them, and they VPN in and all this ugliness. The way it should work today is your solution integrates with their identity provider, their Active Directory or whatever, and then creates a good policy to allow them to only the applications if they have the right LDAP attributes, et cetera, right? Then you as an organization don't need to keep track of who are they hiring or firing, right? All of that stuff is just handled for you by this service. I think this is one of the most important criteria today. And I think if you're looking at a solution, make sure that it does something like this. And I called it, it's like multiple concurrent identity providers. And then lastly, the client support. How is the client supported? Not just from a technical support perspective, but going back to this example that I just talked about. Let's say you have these third parties who are coming in and accessing your application, right? Well, let's suppose it's not a web application. Let's suppose it is a thick client. That's a third party. You can't put an agent on their device. So how do you give access to them? And if you're not giving them network access via a VPN, what does that look like, right? Well, in some cases, they're going to get what we call agentless support, which might be a rendered, a rendering of the screen that they're interacting with, or it might be a remote browser, or it might be some kind of RDP, but it's not web, and you don't own that device. And you can see where it starts to get complicated. But you can also see the power of, if you have the right solution, you should be able to give them zero trust access. They get the work done, and you have less management and better security all at the same time. So those are 3 of what I thought were the important criteria. I mean, they're all important, of course, but these are 3 notable ones that I wanted to talk about. So here's a picture of the wave. There's 15 vendors in it. I try to consider all waves to be everyone's a winner. These are the 15 most important vendors in this particular space. And while I say, I'd like for everyone to consider that everyone's a winner, that's not how the market is perceived. And some we consider leaders, and some we consider strong performers, and down, et cetera, et cetera. So if you want to see this full report, you can get it from Perimeter 81, who has graciously licensed it. So now I brought some fresh stuff that nobody has ever seen before today. This is like fresh data that I got from when I did the research from the ZTNA report. So as part of the research, we get to talk to the customers of the vendors. And I asked them some questions that I thought were particularly interesting, and I want to share some of the results. So of about 44 45 ZTNA customers, I asked, how would you describe your current ZTNA deployment? Is it cloud-based? Is it in light green hybrid? Or is it in the dark green, primarily on-prem? So cloud-based consumed as a service is 58% of the 45 that I talked to. This lines up with our own research at Forrester. When we survey 3,000 security decision makers every year, and we ask them, how would you prefer to consume service X? And it doesn't matter what it is. About 3 out of 4 will say, I'm done racking my own boxes. I just want to consume this thing as a service. It doesn't matter what it's like 72% to 77%, depending on what the technology is. But 3 out of 4 will prefer to consume something as a service. That light green there is a hybrid combination of as a service and on-prem, and then primarily 10% for on-prem only. In this case will always exist, the primarily on-prem, because there are, say, supremely high security environments out there where they simply have requirements. I can't do it in the cloud, and I can't consume it as a service. I need to have something on-prem that I host myself. But that is definitely the minority. Okay, and you can't quite see these the text here, so I've got it in front of me, and I will tell you what it is. When we ask people, so okay, you went and you got ZTNA. Why did you get ZTNA? The very top one is to support remote workforce with higher security. The second one is to support the remote workforce with better performance. So the upshot there is if you add those two together, and even though people could choose more than one response, by far the absolute biggest thing that people were worried about and needed to support was their remote workforce. The third one is moving away from backhauling my VPN, which is effectively some combination of the top two. So one thing to take away from this is for buyers who were looking at ZTNA solutions over the last year and a half, it was definitely about supporting the remote workforce. And we also asked during our research, over the next 3 to 5 years, do you believe that standalone ZTNA solutions will become more or less important for organizations? 85% said more important. About the same was 7%, and then less important is 7%. Now, there's a nuance here in this question that I'm not sure that the people who responded to it meant or didn't, or just skipped over. But that word standalone there, I was trying to tease out, are people thinking that ZTNA will become absorbed into a larger service that offers more of the security functions at the same time? I suspect that when people responded to this question, they were mostly saying they like ZTNA so much they expect it to become more important because it solves so many of their problems, and maybe that it expands going forward. And then again, here on this slide, if you can't read all of these, I will sum it up for you. We asked them, what are the top factors that you believe will drive the increased adoption of ZTNA? So in the previous question, we'd asked them, do you think it's going to become more important? Here we're asking them why. And the responses are the top one is to support the remote workforce and the distributed workforce, right? Which makes total sense, aligning to what we were just talking about before. The second one is to stem a greater threat of cyber attacks. So that's good. And then the third one is digital transformation is exposing more applications. And then it kind of goes down and down and down to things like regulatory environment and bigger penalties around the regulation. But if you really needed to see that data, you can set up an inquiry with me if you're a Forrester client, or come see me at a show or a talk out there. But that's all the data that I had brought from the ZTNA report. It's fascinating stuff. And again, my only regret is I didn't get this report out earlier because everybody needs it. All right, I'm going to turn it over to you guys at Perimeter 81 to talk about your solution for a bit, but I'll hang on for questions.
Thank you so much, David. That's awesome. And I actually see there are a few questions, but guys, I'm going to save them all for the end, and I'll make sure all your questions get answered. So feel free to keep them coming. Amit, the floor is yours. Perimeter 81's ZTNA vision.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you very much, David, for the walkthrough, and I am I read the report a few times, of course, and regardless to the position of Perimeter 81, it's very, very comprehensive, and I think it reiterates all the feedback that we hear from customers all the time. Appreciate that. And I wanted to continue and share with you a little bit about the Perimeter 81 vision, what we continue to hear from customers, as well as the roadmap, and even to do a quick demo of our platform, and be happy to answer any questions that you might have. In very high level, to continue David's overview, today employees are working from home and anywhere, resources are moving to the cloud, and there is shift, right, from site-centric security to user-centric security. And I think it connects, but the way that we define zero trust is by that specific move to provide a user-centric solution and security posture that doesn't matter where your employee opens the computer. It has the same security experience from one end, but from the other end, you protect your network and isolate the networks and the resources accordingly. And we will continue to see that shift, and basically as 5G and fiber are developing, we will continue to see the adoption of basically the internet as the new corporate network. And in order to do so, not only building a strong edge network like we did in 2031, the way that we consume networking and security needs to change. And with that, there are many new opportunities. Okay? We're moving away from hardware-based solution to software-based solution. We move away from installing appliances and hardware to basically provide it as a SaaS solution, software as a service that is completely managed and owned. And there are a few guiding points in the Perimeter 81 vision, right, where we basically are seeking to build a comprehensive secured network as a service that includes a single management console, a single agent that is installed on the user devices, the managed devices, although we have also an agentless solution for unmanaged devices, and a single network that becomes the bloodstream of the organization in order to build a radically simplified SaaS solution, okay, that is easy to use, easy to manage, that is completely software-driven. It's a multi-tenant and multi-regional, includes AAA support, right, regardless where the employees are, available 24/7. And become, we call it the Office 365 cybersecurity, to provide the 360-degree protection using a user-centric approach, and to continue to develop, right, additional security and networking solutions and services, either in-house development or integrations and partnerships, to transform that platform that includes a single agent, a single management console, a single network, to a one-stop shop of both networking and security solutions. I would like to continue with a short demo of our platform to express and to connect you with what we offer, and I will share my screen to know to do so. Okay. As I mentioned, our platform divides into three parts. The first part is the management console, which is a completely SaaS-driven, right? It's a cloud management platform like Salesforce or AWS management console or whatever you can think of, where you have a one place where, as an IT manager, right, you can go in and manage your security and access posture across of the organization. It usually starts by integrating your existing identity providers of the organization. As David shared about the few criteria, right, it's an important piece because ZTNA, it's in core, it's a user-centric delivered security model, and the idea initially is to connect the identity provider in order to bring in the identities that are reflecting under the team view. Once you integrated your identity provider, and you can basically integrate multiple identity providers, even for third parties, you can invite them email and password. Your existing employees, you can connect using Azure IDs. Sometimes you can have 2 different Azure IDs with 2 different domain names. So that can be done very easily with a click of a button over here, and you can choose the exact then provider you'd like to connect. Once you did so, right, it's the time to build your network. The Print81 platform, we have about 30 different POPs all over the world that allowing you to build a true multi-tenant, multi-regional network that exists in the cloud edge, okay, as you can see over here. Without deploying any hardware appliance, you can build in a matter of minutes, right? Multi-regional network, interconnect your existing on-prem firewalls, SD-WAN devices, cloud environments, either utilizing an IPsec site-to-site or a special connector that you deploy on-prem to connect it with the Print81 network. Once you did so, you can think of that you've built a private highways, right, that exist globally, that connecting all your infrastructure, right? You can specify the network topology and all the settings that you usually have in every firewall or router or network device, but from a centric place through that management platform. Once you build that network and interconnected your environment, you can start and build different firewall rules, okay, that allowing you to have a user-driven, right, policies. For example, I can give access to my developers to specific databases in AWS or specific subnets, or supporting all ports and all protocols, basically like a firewall you can think of, but user-centric. Separately, we have our agents. Okay, the agents that are installed over here, you can see it runs in always-on mode. In the background, they're basically tunneling all the traffic to our cloud edge. When I am going and browsing the web, right, specifically here, you can see that we, Print81, become the ISP, right? We are basically, traffic is tunneled to us, unless you configure split tunneling. And we provide all the security services that we talked about, okay, starting with ZTNA over the cloud edge, and we support Windows and Mac and Linux and Android and iPhone. We can configure specific and enforce specific posture policies, right, to check that the antivirus is installed and is updated and the disk is encrypted, and we have a set of policies. You can have visibility to all your devices inside the organization, whether they are secured or not. And more importantly, you can even configure applications, okay, as a SSL VPN replacement, as a reverse proxy to employees or company or even third parties that would like to access specific applications utilizing an unmanaged device. Of course, you have lots of logging and visibility, and you can see who is exactly connected to the networks and when. This is a demo account. And that wraps up the demo, okay? I'll go back to the presentation.
Thank you, Amit. I can pop it back up for us. So a sneak peek at the planned product enhancements, and Amit, I'll let you pick it up once again.
Yes, so as I mentioned, Print81 is a software-delivered solution. It's a software-based, software-driven. We constantly work hand-by-hand with our customers in order to improve and build more enterprise-grade features, as well as adapting to new use cases, right? One of the largest release that we're going to have this year, just this quarter in a month or so is our secure web gateway ability, okay, to configure. And if I will switch back to share my screen, I'll give you a true sneak peek. Over here, basically a web security ability to filter specific categories, right? To allow access to Facebook 20 minutes a day, or to block phishing attacks, to scan files as they're being downloaded. And this is the SWIG offering, right? That on top of our ZTNA offering, which is the most matured, right? Then to go and add more use cases specifically for internet security, as David showed, right? ZTNA has the biggest priority, which we have developed a very large majority in one of the leading solutions out there in the market today. And now we are going to release our SWIG, which will open up lots of opportunities for our existing customers and future customers as well. Next year, we are going to evolve it and also release a CASB offering to deepen the ability to create reports, visibility, user scoring, and all the things that are good things that are coming up.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Amit. That was really informative, and it's really great to see that there's so many exciting things on the horizon for Perimeter 81. And before we get into the Q&A session of this webinar, I just wanted to remind everyone again, you can download the complimentary copy of the Zero Trust New Wave report if you haven't seen it already. You must be at least excited to see it now after this webinar. So you'll be able to see that in Bright Talk in the attachment section after the call comes to a close. And now that we have reached our Q&A session, I see we have a few questions that just came in, actually. So let's start with one for you, David. What do you envision Zero Trust or cybersecurity will look like for businesses in the next 5 years? And that's to you, David.
So I think the supporting the distributed workforce or the remote workforce is going to take center stage, leaving a lot of, say, network security functions behind. Those will still have to be there. They just get deprioritized. And I've talked with some forward-looking security architects who've recently left a lot of their old firewalls behind, right? They sort of moved into the new world where everything is cloud managed and cloud delivered. So the selection of vendors at this time over the next 5 years is going to be crucially important, because they're going to be giving you not just ZTNA, but also a SWIG at the same time. And maybe also doing threat intelligence on your existing traffic. And then will become a very, very important partnership between you and that particular vendor, and or whoever you have that sits in between the two of you managing it. So I definitely see a trend in this particular direction. The other trend I see is, of course, with Zero Trust being the information model in the public sector, they have to respond to the Biden executive order, which effectively is mandating at least a Zero Trust roadmap. And so I've been working with some agencies in the federal space about what that would look like and how can they start getting more zero trusty.
Sounds great. The next one I would like to point at you, Amit. A question for Perimeter 81. What do you believe are your top advantages over other vendors, over other vendor features in the New Wave report? Again, I'll repeat it to you, Amit. It's
yes.
What do you believe are the top advantages over other vendor features in the New Wave report?
I think that Perimeter 81 clear top advantage that we've started from ground zero, basically to build a cloud native, multi-tenant, multi-regional ZTNA that built from scratch, right? To plan for the future. It's not a legacy solution that was transformed to the cloud and to enforce lots of legacy, and we have basically unbuckled ourselves from any limitation in order to build a true cloud-based, easy to use, easy to implement solution that is true multi-tenant, multi-regional, and covers not only applications, but a true layer 3 to layer 7 support that allowing you to migrate from your existing VPNs completely, okay, without leaving any leftovers, right, where you basically have a legacy system that still needs to be utilized for specific type of applications, and the ZTNA for, let's say, more modern applications and services. So we offer both. Our platform is really was built in order to support both. We have a solution with an agent that supports all ports, all protocols, including VoIP, and from the managed devices and unmanaged devices support with our ZTAA, we call it Zero Trust Application Access. And everything was tailored in a very holistic manner that is comprehensive and harmonic and can be implemented and utilized and used very easily. And for a fact, we have 1,900 businesses today that operate their complete network and remote access solution utilizing Perimeter 81, so it fits the market needs, right? And which is also very important to stress.
Thank you, Amit. I'm actually going to point this one at David. It didn't point to anyone for this one, but I think it's a great question for you. How would you explain, David, zero trust to relatively less informed stakeholders?
That's a conversation we have quite a bit just within Forrester, and we're of two minds about it. One is, if a stakeholder doesn't necessarily need to know about zero trust, you may not bring a whole lot of value by trying to explain it to them. People can become very confused about zero trust, and they start to think that it is things that it is not. So, for example, you might run into people who think that zero trust is about not trusting people or not trusting your partners, and that's not what it's about. It is about reducing implicit trust. However, so imagine a conversation where you did have to interact with somebody who's, say, maybe not a security specialist, but for some reason they have to know about zero trust. Maybe because you have a zero trust initiative at your company and they need to know what do they need to do in order to help achieve that goal. Like if safety or if quality is everyone's job or zero trust is everyone's job, then you might posit to them as this is the cybersecurity information model that we should have all had in the beginning, which is much more about controlling trust and establishing trust, and not letting the sort of willy-nilly anybody can join the network approach that we built the whole internet on to remain the model in the future. So if you're really curious about that, we have a lot of papers about how to talk about zero trust to different stakeholders at your organization at Forrester. So if you're a Forrester client, go seek those out, or you may be able to find mentions of them in the Forrester blog.
Perfect. Thank you for that, David. A couple more questions here. We keep getting a few rolling on in. Let's point one to you, Amit. What's the best approach to transition from VPN to ZTNA?
Okay, it's a great question. I've been hearing that a lot. My point of view here is not wait, right? And there isn't a requirement to rip and replace, okay? And the best approach with ZTNA and specific software, cloud-based delivered services at Perimeter 81, that they allow you to start small, okay, very quickly, very effectively, allow you to test the water, I would say, without any barriers, right? You don't need to commit, you don't need to purchase an expensive solution. It's a subscription base, so you basically can open a workspace at Perimeter 81 very quickly. Go to perimeter81.com, create a new workspace, and you have already started to do that migration. Now you can choose and to prioritize the different use cases. For example, we have a large food distribution company in Israel that decided to do that migration, and unlike other customers of ours that wanted to go all in from day zero, right? They wanted to start with only the contractors, only the third parties they work with, right? The supply chain, and to strengthen that, instead of giving them a full VPN access to the corporate infrastructure. And that basically a ZTNA solution that is cloud delivered, right? Without any appliance, can allow you to do that very easily. Simply create a new workspace, connect your existing environments, and start to basically expose specific resources to specific people in the organization, right? Inside or outside, it is your call. Once you do so, right, you start to understand the concept and all the advantages, right? You don't need to manage an appliance. You don't need to manage the security patches. You have a complete visibility on everything, what they do. You can have a specific use case to have access to a specific application on a specific hour and day and a specific device and a specific location, right? And the amount of flexibility that it gives you, that it strengthens your confidence into continue to do that migration, and then you decide, okay, what is the next step? So I covered all my applications with my third parties. Now I would like my developers and QA teams or the IT teams to do the migration, right? And eventually migrate the entire company on the fly. And I think this is the right approach, right? And this is the great advantages of a SaaS solution that doesn't require you to do everything all overnight. And I believe, and David will agree with me probably, that this transition is just in the beginning, right? The infrastructure, the internet will continue to evolve, and corporate networks will continue to migrate to the internet itself.
Right. I do agree with that, in that many of the trends that were underway before the pandemic merely got accelerated by the pandemic. So we were already planning a ZTNA wave even before the pandemic. It's just that the pandemic made you really prioritize that over other technologies. Or people might say that the digital transformation or the cloud adoption, all of those were trends that were underway that just got accelerated.
Right.
Well, that actually ties in. Sorry, please.
And one last piece, right? Everyone hates VPN, so it's relatively easy, right, to convince the team, the employees, to migrate to a new solution, as it increases productivity, it increases satisfaction rate within the organization, reduce the loads from the IT teams. It's a relatively easy project, right, to let's say promote internally, and that's what we definitely see.
So that actually ties in perfectly with our last question. One of our audience members, this is for both of you, and David, feel free to answer first if you'd like. Excuse me. What are challenges for SMBs and MSBs? So what are challenges for small businesses and medium-sized businesses looking to scale up their business due to the pandemic growth? So David, you can take the first shot.
I'm going to answer this as if it were an opportunity rather than a challenge. And so one of the things I've noticed is that the smaller the organization, the more likely they are to be able to adopt this whole zero trust edge framework where they consume everything as a service, and that they can switch to the new way of doing things, right? The challenge for the larger organizations has been, we just have too much stuff going on. We can't adopt this whole thing. We have 28 factories around the world, and we don't know how that's all going to work. the companies, the smaller organizations, I think, are able to adopt this much more easily, right? And so that kind of works in their favor. Challenges might be budget and partnerships, and a lot of times the challenges that smaller organizations have in that they don't have the right people to even understand these kind of things and what they should be doing in the first place. So I don't know. I'll let Amit respond and see what he says.
I think that David was very spot on. I think small size and mid-sized businesses are cloud first and mobile first. It's easier for them to basically implement ZTNA and secure network as a service as a true solution, right? It's a little bit like overshooting a little bit on the market, and to work closely with them in order to build a very strong offering that will meet the larger enterprise down the road. So first of all, by implementing ZTNA and secure network as a service, or ZTE, within the mid-size companies, you can basically look in the future how large enterprises are going to work. Okay? From one end, but from the other end, it allows those type of companies to enjoy enterprise-grade security today, because it's expensive, right, to buy appliances, and data centers, and to invest all the things. So it's really, I think, pivotal type of market that will contribute a lot and will also benefit a lot from that basically revolution, not evolution, that is happening in this space now.
Wonderful. We had a really great flurry of questions today. If you have any additional questions to everyone in our audience that we didn't have time to address in this webinar, please feel free to visit us at perimeter81.com or contact us directly at sales@perimeter81.com. You can also check out the Forrester webinar, the Forrester report from David and the Forrester team, which is just excellent. And of course, we invite you to follow Amit, follow David, Forrester, Perimeter 81 on social media and online. And again, most importantly, I would like to thank David and Amit for joining us today. It was a pleasure to have you both, and we look forward to the future of Zero Trust. Absolutely.
All right. Thanks for having me. Goodbye, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, David. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you.